Hey everybody, this is Madhav here from the Remote Marketing Podcast. Today we're actually going to dive deep into an important topic in SEO, which is internal linking, and why it doesn't get the importance it deserves as compared to external link building. And how you can implement it at scale, or a good internal linking best practices, all of that. And so, our guest on the podcast today is Alex Birch. He's my colleague at Bonsai, and just some background, but we started hiring for an SEO lead earlier this year, and Alex ended up being the chosen one. And he currently leads SEO at Bonsai, and was previously leading SEO Typeform. And he's changed the way we kind of think about SEO, and I learn a lot from him every day. So I just thought that it'd be kind of great to tap into his experience with internal linking, and so and kind of give you all an intro on really what's kind of like the best practices in internal linking. So anyway, welcome to the show, Alex.
Thanks, Madhav. Thanks for the wonderful intro.
Yeah, it kind of feels weird, right? Like we speak every day, but right now it's almost like it's this formal conversation and everything.
I feel like I'm on Joe Rogan.
Yeah. But awesome. All right. So let's jump right into it, right? Like so when you kind of came into Bonsai, right? Like and when we started working together, and even if you kind of look at your number of years at Typeform, right? You've been a big advocate for internal linking, right? Why do you feel so? Like, why do you feel internal linking is super important? And like everybody in the SEO world's like do external linking, hire link building agencies, do all sorts of outreach, but you're someone who advocates internal linking more than external linking. Why do you feel so?
It's a good question. So I feel like it's because a lot of people, obviously external linking gets a lot of hype, and it's obviously very important, but I think it's one of the things that you can kind of do. You can do it with like very little resources. You can get it done quite quickly. It's something that you can sort of incorporate into like a regular strategy. So you can do it as you produce new content, or you can do it sort of historically. And I think, especially when you look at a website like Bonsai, naturally as the company grows, a lot of people link to the homepage. And then what you end up happening is you have like the vast majority of the links, they just end up pointing to the homepage. So the homepage picks up a lot of authority from all of these backlinks that are pointing to it. And then what you'll find is as the website itself grows and as new pages are added, they don't really get very well internally linked. So when Google crawls the website, it finds the pages that are linked directly from the homepage very easily. But what you'll find is a lot of the sort of new pages, perhaps on the blog, or new sort of like smaller product pages, or if you have like a template or stuff like that, they often kind of they don't get as much love. So I think it's one of the things that a lot, there's companies that do it really well and they understand the importance of it. But I think a lot of companies, they don't really realize the sort of power of it when it's kind of done properly. And as we've kind of seen at Bonsai, it's not super resource heavy. You don't really need to hire anybody in to do it. You can get it done quite quickly. There's tools you can use to help you do it. So I think it's one of those things, if you compare it to how difficult it is to build backlinks, it's relatively easy to get done, and you can see really good results from it. So that's why for me it's up there with one of the most important things in SEO, I think.
Got it. And then even on like, let's kind of talk about the Typeform days as well, right? Like you were there for almost 4 years. Was internal linking a priority there? And did you kind of see any meaningful results from all sorts of internal linking efforts you did there, if you did any?
Yeah, so I mean, when I started very early on, the marketing team was, it was quite small, and we didn't really have. I actually started as the SEO intern years and years ago, and I worked with a guy called Jake Stainer, who was sort of the marketing, the guy that wears all the hats, if you will. So he did a bit of SEO, he did a bit of paid search. He kind of did a little bit of everything, and then I came on board, and he sort of taught me SEO very quickly, and then but very early on that became you know, it became one of the things that we did a lot of, because the website had been built, but it had been built not really with any consultation from anybody that you know, really understood SEO on a deep level. So, and this is what you'll kind of find is, you know, the website will be built and it'll look great, but there's just these sort of like low hanging fruit things that you can do around internal linking. So that was one of the things that we did, and we saw really great results from it, like big keywords that you know, we weren't even on the first 2 or 3 pages for. Once we really sort of optimized the internal linking, specifically using very sort of focused anchor text, I remember doing monthly reports, and you know, sometimes even within a few weeks, you could see these keywords just jumping up and jumping up. And really the only thing that we were doing at that point was internal linking. So yeah, it was a big part of what we did there. And yeah, we saw great results for it. And obviously it's great if you can report back that you've spent no money. You've just kind of in maybe a couple of sprints, you've done all of this internal linking, and then you already start to see the results. It's great. So yeah, it works really well at Typeform. Yeah.
Yeah. And like really interesting insights here, right? So kind of related to this, right? Like you mentioned that, at Typeform, you guys initially kind of, like there wasn't a lot of special focus on SEO, like the site was built, and then finally, you guys start kind of thinking about really structuring it, more properly and kind of giving it more love, right? So kind of a question to that is that when should internal linking be a priority in the company? Like, should it be for, let's say, a company which has a blog, and like 10 blog posts for it? Should it be a priority for them, or should it be for somebody who's kind of done all of the regular things in SEO and kind of reached like a flattened out stage, or is it just for everybody? When does it really make sense to kind of make this like one of the higher priorities for the company?
I think it makes sense to sort of embed it as early as you can. Like, I remember with some of the writers at Typeform, initially they were a little bit skeptical of sort of going back and optimizing internal linking. But what we started to see is that when we started to do that, we started to see the posts improve and the ranks improve. And I think this is the key is educate, like as an in-house SEO. I think it's really important that the people that you work with, you don't just kind of like you don't just kind of preach about what needs to be done for SEO, but you get people involved in the actual process so they can see the results themselves, and then they naturally, if a writer is producing content and it's not really ranking, and then all of a sudden you can help them with the internal linking, you can help them with the way they structure the content, and they see that content then getting more views and getting signups and getting to the front page, then they start to enjoy it, and they start to see the benefits of it. So I think it's something that I think it's something that is worth sort of trying to embed into the culture early on, because if you get it done early on, it's much easier to do it as you go rather than have to look back and historically change everything, so I would advise people to run, like if you have a team of writers, just run a small workshop on internal linking and educate the writers that you work with on why it's important and how it's going to help them and how it's going to help their content. So I would recommend it's something that everybody is kind of aware of and aware of, because you can see, once you start seeing the results for it, and once you sort of you report on those results, everybody starts to ask questions. Oh, so what should I put as the anchor text here, and where should I link there? And and then people start just doing it naturally, I think. And that's when you can kind of say, like, my work's done almost. Because you've kind of educated people on how to do it, and then they do it as they're moving forward. And I think that's the best sort of situation to sort of find yourself in.
Got it. Got it. When you kind of look at internal linking as such, like what do you feel, like you mentioned that, helping the writers kind of, maybe it's part of the process of them kind of linking to the right pages and everything, right? Like, what do you feel are like good or like almost a fundamental internal linking best practices that an SEO team and a marketing organization should definitely have? Like, are there any examples that you have?
It's another good question. I think generally, first of all, is just educating people on sort of like the fundamentals of what internal linking means, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So just getting people to understand how Google sort of reads page equity, how page equity and page rank sort of is passed around the site, and what the purpose of an internal link is. And obviously, on a very sort of fundamental basis, an internal link is there to help the reader. And that's one thing that I would stress as well, is that internal linking should always, it still should be quite natural. Um, it shouldn't just be super forced. But also it is something, like we said, that that helps Google crawl the site, but it also, like I said, it is there to help the reader. So one of the things is understanding kind of what the target keywords for a specific page. There's a lot of SEOs. I think that there's quite a well-known SEO. It's Matthew Woodward, and he advocates for very, very heavy specific anchor text, for example. So if there's a certain post, for example, that's about email marketing, you want a link to that post using the anchor text email marketing as often as you can, because that's signaling to Google this page is about email marketing. The old days of having anchor text where it was, it's click here. These are the sorts of things that you can still find these things on websites where people don't really understand internal linking. These are not descriptive anchor text for the user or for Google. So I think just things like that, is understanding if you have when you have the homepage is bustling with all of this this equity from Google. And if you just have a post that's in the middle of nowhere and there's no links to it, Google's not going to find it very often. It's not going to crawl it. It's not going to receive any equity from the homepage. So I think it's just there's no real sort of like tricks. I think it's just educating people on sort of why it's important. It's not a super technical or complex concept to understand, I don't think. But yeah, I would just advise people to understand how page rank sort of and page equity flows around the site, the importance of that, and then also the importance of like anchor text, because you often get a lot of questions around like can we overuse anchor text, like you can in an external sense. Like you don't want to have 1,000 backlinks pointing to a certain page and they all use the same anchor text. If you only have 1,010 links in total, it's very suspicious to Google. But even officially from Google, they've said that use anchor text as freely as you want within your own website. It's there to sort of help the user understand the page, but also help Google understand the page. So anchor text is one of those things, that I would recommend people sort of having as like a fundamental basis of internal linking.
Got it. And just, for discussion purposes, can you kind of expand a little bit on, like, you said that people should understand the fundamentals of internal linking, and the concept of page equity. Let's dive in a little bit on that. Can you give a little bit of overview, if someone doesn't understand what page equity is and how it basically makes sense, and why then internal linking really helps with kind of distributing page equity?
Yeah, so I mean, in the old days, it used to be there used to actually be sort of like a Google plugin where you could see the official page rank of a page, and this was essentially just like a score that Google would give to a page based on based on sort of how many backlinks were pointing to that page, and how well internally linked it was. And that's since been removed. I think even before I got into SEO, that was removed. But you'll find on tools, such as Ahrefs and Sitebulb and Screaming Frog, they still use their own sort of unofficial page rank metrics. So generally speaking, the homepage will have the most backlinks. So that page carries the most authority. Because when people link to the website, that's kind of like Google's way of understanding, okay, these other websites are telling us that this page is really important. So page rank is basically how much importance that one page has in the eyes of Google. So when you have the homepage, for example, if you link from the homepage to a product page, if you link directly from the homepage, then you're passing on some of that equity from the homepage to the connected page. So this is a way of telling Google this second page is really important as well. So that's kind of how page rank works. It's kind of they call it page rank or page equity. It's kind of a way of measuring how important Google perceives a page to be. And that's where the internal linking comes in, because you sort of, you can pass that around a website. If you have what's called an orphan page, which is a page that's just stranded on its own, it doesn't have any internal links, Google, first of all, is not going to find it. And if it does find it, it's going to see that it's not connected to any other important pages. So its page rank is going to be very low. So it's not going to deem that page to be very important. So if you're trying to get that page to rank for specific keywords, then you might struggle.
Got it. Yeah. So, and you brought, like, for example, you said, right, like PageRank, and a lot of these tools like Moz has like I think a page authority and a domain authority, and then Ahrefs has a domain rating, and I don't know, DR and PR and all of those different things, right? So like you said, everyone has a way to kind of evaluate that, right? If somebody, like for example, if someone listens to this episode, they're like, all right, it makes sense to kind of maybe start exploring internal linking a little bit more heavily, build processes in there. What's kind of like, as a starting point, what's the best way to understand your current internal linking structure, and to even identify if it really needs improvement? Maybe they've been doing it correctly in the past. Maybe it doesn't really require an improvement. How do you know the internal structure? Is it through checking in Google Search Console? Are there any tools out there that might help with that? Can you give a little bit insight there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can use Google Search Console to download, how many. There's an internal link, sort of an internal links report. So if you don't have, if you're a little bit short on budget, or if you don't want to buy one of the paid tools, Google Search Console is great for seeing, how many internal links a page has. So there's a report in there where you can export all of the data, and it will show you the number of internal links that a page has. So you can export that data, and then you can go through and you can see, hang on a minute, well, this is one of my most important pages, but it doesn't actually have many internal links. So there on the very surface, you can see perhaps I should add more internal links to this page, because it's one of the pages that I actually consider to be really important for the website. The best thing that I would recommend is there's a tool called Sitebulb, which is, it's amazing for SEO. It's essentially, it basically crawls your website and then gives you this amazing interface to sort of dissect all of the pages, and you can do what they call site visualizations, where it will crawl every page on the site, and then it will give you a beautiful visualization of the page structure. So you can see in a very visual way when pages are on their own. And then what you can do is you can sort of click in to each page, and it will give you like a summarized report. So for example, one of the things that I did at Bonsai is I looked at all of our most important sort of SEO pages, and I tried to see based on the report, which ones were, which ones didn't really have much page equity. Because especially when you have a website that has a lot of sort of product pages, or like at Bonsai, for example, we have a lot of template pages. It's quite difficult to build backlinks directly to these pages. So what you can do with a tool like Sitebulb is you can see, okay, for this cluster of pages, what is the page rank score? So Sitebulb will give you, I think they call it page rank score, or it might be slightly different, the term that they use, but it's essentially the same as the old Google score, but it's Sitebulb's own version of it, and it calculates how many internal links it has and where it sits in terms of the structure. So you can see it in a visual way, or you can download the actual data and you can see, okay, these are the pages that have a lot of internal links. And it's quite surprising sometimes when you look at it, some of the pages that you are important in terms of SEO, you realize that they have a page rank score of 15 out of 100 because they only have a handful of links pointing to them. And that's quite an easy fix and a quick win. So like one of the things we did at Bonsai was we added a carousel of links to all of our template pages. So in a programmatic way, they all linked back to each other, and it just improved all of those scores. So previously there was a lot of pages that had a very low page rank score, and we used Sitebulb to identify that. And then we did the internal linking, and then you can see the page score increased. Mm-hmm. So Google Search Console is always a great basis for this. And then Sitebulb and Screaming Frog as well has the same sort of capabilities. But also Ahrefs as well. Ahrefs does this as well. There's a way of seeing a similar metric. I'm not sure exactly what they call it in there, but yeah. So there's quite a few tools you can use to
Got it. Yeah. And by the side note, like we've been working on Sitebulb. It is a fantastic tool. And we're not at all sponsored by Sitebulb. There is no.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, but it is a fantastic tool. One of the interesting things that Alex had done was, at the beginning, we kind of, so their site visualizations are pretty awesome, like the way he was explaining, right? You can see visually how your internal linking structure. So Alex was like, in the beginning, he's like, here's what our internal structure is like. And then a month or 2 months later, once the internal linking was done, we recrawled it again and we showed, the updated visual structure. You can see a huge difference in, like, initially it was almost like a, just one page passing equity to like 600 pages. And now it's like one page passing equity to 10 pages and then 10 passing to another 10. So really structured that way, right? So that helps you kind of even in a way visually see that change, what changed after the internal linking and probably how Google perceives it. So it's definitely a great tool. But, Alex, you brought this up, right? Like, the carousels like that we brought up, right? And this is an important thing to kind of discuss about, right? Internal linking manually is fine. If you've got a website with maybe 30-40 pages, it's totally okay to kind of manually link from here and there, right? But when you kind of reach the scale, if you've got like 600 or 1,000 or I don't know 10,000 or 100,000 pages, right? It's a whole different thing. You can't really go manually, to kind of interlink these different things, right? So, when we are talking about scaling internal link building, what do you feel are kind of like some of the best practices you've seen on other sites and elsewhere in your experience that are kind of like quick wins, almost like the way you mentioned, like programmatic internal link building or something like that. So link carousels was one of them. What else? What are some of the other ways to kind of scale up internal link building?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few ways. I mean, one of the things, one of the best ways is just the old traditional breadcrumbs. So these are the sort of like navigational links that you have generally in like the top left-hand corner of a page. So you'll find this a lot in e-commerce. If you click on men's shoes and then you click on Nike shoes, for example, you'll generally get a breadcrumb in the top left-hand corner. And these work really well because you can programmatically do that across thousands of pages if you need to. And they're also great for the user. Like when you're on a website, it makes it much easier to navigate back to where you were before without hitting the back button and everything else. So I would say that that's one of the best ways if you have the option to do that and if it makes sense, because it's great for the user. And generally that's the way you should, or that's the way I try to think about SEO is not, no hacks or whatever. It's let's think about the user. If it makes sense for the user, then it's generally good for SEO as well. So that's one of the main ways I would recommend. And then, if you're talking about, blog articles, for example, you can perhaps add like a sidebar with, you see it quite often on big blogs like HubSpot do this very well. They have, you may also like, or you might find interesting, or at the bottom they have like recommended articles, and this is a great way of programmatically sort of clustering all these, different types of content together. And then if you're using WordPress, there's a lot of plugins now that you can actually use to programmatically add in content links. So you can tell the plugin to find specific keywords and then add a specific anchor text. So for example, with the example before of email marketing, you could find all the instances on your website of where email marketing is mentioned, and then programmatically add the link. I've actually not personally used that because we moved away. I mean, at Typeform, we moved away from WordPress, and I've not really worked on WordPress for a while, but I've heard good things about that. So yeah, I mean, I think they would be sort of like the main sort of ways to do it programmatically.
Got it.
I mean, there's also ways, of finding these opportunities. I mean, Ahrefs have just, they've come out with a new internal linking tool, which is really great, that actually finds examples of pages that haven't linked to a second page, and then so it kind of finds the opportunities for you to do the internal link. So it takes that manual sort of work out. You still actually have to go in and manually add the link, but it finds the opportunities for you in a sort of programmatic way. And then you've got the classics, Google site search. So if you don't have access to some of these tools, or you can't use a WordPress plugin, you can just use a Google site search to find a specific keyword on your website, and then sort of go from there.
What do you mean by the Google site search? Like just going in into Google search and kind of writing that site and whatever. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so you can, for example, if you was working on the Bonsai website, you can put site semicolon hellobonsai.com. And then you can put in a keyword. If you put the keyword in quotations, it'll find only the specific text. So if you if you wanted to look for email marketing, you could put Hello Bonsai, site Hello Bonsai, email marketing, and it'll find all the instances of and it generally brings the pages to the top that are the pages that have the highest page equity, because it's essentially just telling Google to only look at that one site and then display the results only from that one site. So it's an easy way to find the top pages on your site that mention email marketing, for example.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think one thing to also kind of add here is that you also mentioned, right, like you guys moved out of WordPress at Typeform. I think in general what I've seen is that yes, plugins can kind of help add all of these links and everything, right? It's not ideal. Sometimes there might be a different link, or links might get replaced and all that, right? So I think in general what I feel is that if you have like a 40-50 page site, maybe WordPress makes more sense. But I think as you kind of start growing bigger, if you have like 500 pages, 600 pages, different a lot of pages level SEO strategy, then I think WordPress kind of starts lacking, and then you should go for like a little bit more programmatic CMS. One of the so the CMS we use at Bonsai is called Webflow, and it's actually pretty amazing, because the thing is that it allows us to kind of make these internal linking changes on a programmatic level. Sometimes you can just a simple example is that they have this feature called symbols, which basically allows you, like the footer, for example, right? The footer can be a symbol, and then whenever you make any change on the footer, it just doesn't change the links on that page. It actually changes it across all of the 600 pages wherever the footer shows. And it couldn't, it wouldn't just be the footer. It could be any common symbol that you could do, right? So I think those are, when you kind of move to a CMS like that, that will really, really help in kind of making those changes. And I think then, there are obviously other things that we've seen. Like, for example, Alex, I don't know if you remember, we saw once, right? In Vato's site, what these guys do is they kind of have like, these set of links that are actually hidden, and you actually have to kind of toggle that option open to kind of see all of the links.
Mm.
And that was an interesting way that we saw to kind of link to like some of the pages, because oftentimes like the website footer is kind of like one of the most premium website or internal linking real estate that you have, right? So and you probably have limited links that you can add. You can't really add like 500 links in there, and so when you're kind of limited by that, the hidden categories might make sense, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the drop down. Yeah,
That was
yeah, and that yeah, it's a good point. I mean, the header and the footer are often like quite underutilized at times. Sometimes it's they can be overutilized, and people try and, like you said, stick too many links in there. But oftentimes, like the header, for example. You see companies like MailChimp, and they make great use of their header. They have beautiful sort of navigation at the top of the page, and that's not only great from a UX perspective, but like you said, from if you make those changes programmatically, that goes across every single page on your site. So adding your most important pages to those navigations it's a great way to do that programmatically as well.
yeah. Interesting. So, I mean, let's now talk about, when, let's say, a website has 600 pages, right? And they need to kind of identify which are the most important ones and everything, right? There is, there probably should be kind of like a page hierarchy that's kind of agreed on an organization level, right? Like you said, one of the most common, kind of internal linking page structures that you've kind of seen everywhere is there's the home page, which is the most important page, and then boom, everything else, right? Everything's level 2. And obviously that's not best, because now you're kind of internally linking to all of these different pages. But if, let's say, do you feel that companies should kind of invest their time to kind of agree on like a defined page structure, you know and like, if they're kind of defining a page structure, do you think, like, let's say, for example, every site has a home page, has the product pages, has a blog, has a help article, has some ebook download pages, and all of these different things, right? So how do you identify which are the important pages that kind of need equity? Do you look at the SEO keyword opportunity and kind of push those up based on that, or is there something else that I'm missing here?
I mean, I think it's kind of it's kind of a mixture of things. And I think it goes back to thinking about the user, and thinking about structuring the website in a way that makes sense for the user. So generally now it's pretty much like common practice to sort of adopt like the hub and spoke strategy that HubSpot made very sort of very, very sort of famous. And I think if you follow a strategy like that, you naturally, it's easier to sort of naturally define what a structure should be. Do you link to the blog directly from the homepage? Yeah, probably most of the time you do. And then from the blog, you generally have categories of the blog. So would you link to the actual categories of the blog from the homepage? No, probably not. It probably doesn't really make sense from like a hierarchy perspective. So when you start to look at it in that way, is in, we have the homepage, then we're going to link to the blog, and then we have categories on the blog. It starts to make a little bit more sense when you think of it in that way. And then there might be pages, there might be pages that don't really fall into any sort of like natural structure. For example, competitor pages, they might not really fall into a specific category on the blog. They're not really a product page, so where do you kind of put them? I think it can come down to, how important are these keywords for you in terms of driving qualified traffic. If they are very important, then you can sort of reflect that in where you put them. For example, a lot of companies do put these types of pages in the footer, but also because it kind of makes sense from a user perspective. Is if you're browsing the homepage, when you go to the footer, you want these kind of like resource links to be there most of the time. So again, it's kind of a mixture of. I don't want to say common sense, but because it's not always obvious. But I would just stress again is think about the user and think about the natural hierarchy of a site and how people navigate. You navigate to the blog, then you navigate to the email marketing section, and then you navigate to the subject line section, and then you navigate to the. So if you think about it in that way and you try to do it in a natural way, I think you're setting yourself up for success. I think if you start to try and do things in like a hacky way, looking for shortcuts and looking for ways to sort of maybe deceive or whatever, then I would advise against that. So I would say follow structures like the hub and spoke model, and that will generally lead you down the right path, I find.
100% agree. Yeah, that's a very, very valid point, right? Like kind of think of the user experience, right? Like when someone kind of comes in, almost kind of think about like like a menu, that, hey, here are the product pages, here's all of the learning centers that you can learn from, here's how you can do a competitor comparison, all of that. Because like especially in the hotel industry and everything, you see a lot of these sites with absolutely shitty internal linking, navigations and everything at the bottom. It will be something like hotels in Barcelona, hotels in within Barcelona, like 5 or 6 other things and everything, right? And that is just not the best experience possible, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
that kind of leans into like probably one of the final questions in our discussion today, which is what other companies do you feel do internal linking really well? If we could let's take 3 examples that you would suggest our listeners to kind of go check out, their internal linking for, and of all those 3 examples, give what's the best thing that you like about internal linking for them.
Okay. I mean, I honestly think one of the best examples is Amazon. Amazon just do they obviously it's an absolute mammoth e-commerce website, right? But they have a very, very good way of programmatically internal linking all of those pages. Obviously, there's not somebody at Amazon that sat there, doing an Amazon site search and adding these links. So they've set Amazon up in a way programmatically. So whenever new pages are created, you have the product sits in a category, and then a subcategory, and then a subcategory, and they do that really, really well. So I think that Amazon is probably the one of the best examples of an e-commerce internal linking structure. But I think a lot of sites, a lot of e-commerce sites do this very well, and they utilize breadcrumbs very well, and that type of thing. I think closer to the space of Bonsai, I think websites like Jotform, they do. Jotform are a bit of an SEO hero for me. They're kind of they've been like my arch nemesis at every company that I've worked at so far, where no matter what you seem to Google related to templates, they appear. And they've done this by utilizing the page rank that they have, by passing that page rank through internal linking, through navigation menus, through linking in the footer. They use anchor text very sort of aggressively, but in a natural way as well, in a way that's useful to the user. And the way they design their pages lends itself very well to. They have these menus on the side that link to all of the categories, and then you click into the category, and then it links directly to the subcategory, but not just to the subcategory. It links to all the individual template pages. So it's very easy for Google to crawl their pages, and it's very easy for a user to navigate. So I think if you do both of those things, you're on for a good time. And then I would say, companies like Canva do a great job. Canva, I mean, if you check out Canva's organic growth, it just looks like this or like this, I guess. They did an amazing job of SEO. I'm not sure who was the SEO lead there when they kicked it. I think he's left now. I can't remember his name, but he did such an amazing job of building this incredible machine of templates, of blog posts, of external backlink. I mean, of backlinking, but also of creating an amazing site structure. They have the homepage, they have the product page, and then they have the category pages. And when you browse through the website, you can see they utilize breadcrumbs very well. All of their blog posts, you're reading through the blog posts, and you can see the specific anchor text that they use to link out to their template pages, to their product pages. And this goes back to the original topic we were talking about of, when should a company start doing this, is if you do this from the very beginning, you don't have to go back and fix all of this. They implemented that very early, and that contributed towards their success and their growth, I think. So, I would say Amazon Jotform and companies like Canva, Venngage is another one that does it very well. You can, like I said, you can always see when these companies have had a very solid SEO strategy in terms of internal linking from early on. You can usually see that it pays off.
I agree. And Canva has been like, it's a story to kind of tell to like all of the SEOs. It was funny, like I met the Canva founders at the beginning of their kind of Canva journey. It was like in 2015. At that time, they were saying, "Oh, we've just hit about I think 5 million users in like 2.5 years, and we just launched Canva for Work, and it's already getting like 20%." And then I think this was like three and a half years ago, and I think a month back I saw that they have like 50 million users now or something. Like, it is absolutely
Something
insane.
crazy. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to really admire companies like this, right? Like, it's no easy feat to do that, And I think, they had a little bit of luck with the pandemic. Well, with the pandemic, like, I think it's fair to say when companies have had like a bit of luck like that, which they have. Unfortunately, it's come through like something, not that great for society as a whole, obviously. But they're providing a lot of value. But yeah, everything they do, from the product to their SEO to product marketing, everything is really spot on. So it's and I think the founders seem really humble, cool people as well, which is it's great to see these young tech companies just kind of changing industries and challenging the way people do things. And I mean, I'm a Canva user myself, and it's a great product. So I admire them from an SEO perspective, but also from a product perspective as well. So yeah.
Yeah, agree. 100% agree. All right. Okay. Before we kind of head off, right, a couple of questions. First, if you were to recommend one person to kind of come on this podcast, or in one of the next episodes, who would it be?
Ooh. It easily came to my mind. So it's a a guy that I think puts out a ton of great content. It's Kevin Indig. So he's the VP of SEO and content at G2 now, and I actually had some mentorship from him when I was at Typeform, and he's just a great guy. He's a super nice guy. Just so knowledgeable and so thirsty to learn and to listen to people. And he actually has his own podcast and YouTube channel, and he has a great blog called Techbound. And he's one of these people that I don't know where they find the time to do all of this stuff. I feel like he must be incredibly good at organizing his time, because his execution and all of the things that he does is just great. But I think he's a great person to speak to, because he's just so enthusiastic about all the different aspects of business and marketing and mindset and everything like that. So that'd be great if you could speak to Kevin for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, great recommendation. Yeah, even I've read, like, he is, yeah, I think he was before at Atlassian, and I think, yeah, like I've read a lot of his content. He is pretty well informed. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's an awesome recommendation. If listeners wanted to kind of get in touch with you, what would be the best way? Your Twitter handle, email, or personal website?
Yeah, I mean, you can obviously find me on LinkedIn. I am on Twitter. I think my name is Berchinio on Twitter. I'm more of
Berchini?
Berchinio. It comes from I remember it was like the World Cup years ago, and Ronaldinho and somebody called me Berchinio, and it just kind of stuck.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I mean, I actually have a small YouTube channel as well that I'm trying to grow, which is the Honest Entrepreneurs. It's I have an Amazon FBA business that I do on the side. That might be actually another conversation for us to have in a separate podcast, perhaps. But yeah, so if anybody wants to find me there, it's a very new channel, but we're called the Honest Entrepreneurs. That's myself and my business partner Tom, and business partner and friend. But yeah, LinkedIn. If you want to find me there, just reach out, and I'm always happy to chat to. And I'm an active member as well of Traffic Think Tank, which is an SEO community. You can always see me posting questions in there and having conversations with other SEOs and stuff. So yeah.
That's amazing. All right. Okay. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Alex. I will keep seeing you, but hopefully we'll see you on the podcast again too.
Cool. Thanks a
All
lot,
right.
Nadav.
See ya. Bye.
Cheers now. Bye.
All right. Awesome recording.